Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice, whether starting your bachelor's degree or advancing your career. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. According to the latest census, 1 in every 5 Americans is a woman of color. African American or Black women make up a third largest group behind white and Hispanic women, yet the rate of Black women graduating from college is in decline, workplaces struggle to retain Black women professionals, and Black women were disproportionately affected by the COVID pandemic. Up next on Another View, the Roundtable. We'll be talking about the state of Black women in America. That's next on Another View, after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Let me apologize for my nasalness today, but my allergies are on fire. So those of you who suffer with allergies, I know you can relate. March is Women's History Month, a perfect time for our all-female Another View Roundtable to have an honest discussion about the state of Black women in America. So let's get right to our pundits. She's Virginia's relationship expert, Dr. Alvean Lyons. Hello, Alvean.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. She's the treasurer for the city of Norfolk, Daun Hester. Hello, Daun.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to see those I can see, and thank you all for listening to us.
Absolutely. And she teaches political science to students at Norfolk State University, Professor Carol Pretlow. Hello, Carol.
Hello, Barbara and everybody.
Carol, we really miss seeing you. It's been way too long.
I know. I miss you guys, too.
Absolutely. So we want to talk about the state of Black women in America. Now, we will let our audience know right now, some of this will be research-driven. Some of this is based on personal experience. So we are having a conversation. So, ladies, I want you to answer this question, each of you. Overall, okay, what grade would you give the state of Black women in America today? A, B, C, D, or F, and why? Okay, do I need to repeat that? You got it? Alvean, let's start with you.
So there are no B pluses,
no B pluses, nope. A, B, C, D, or F. And why are you grading it that way?
Sounds like my student.
So I would have to give us a solid B. And for a couple of reasons. The part of if this were, in honor of Carol, of course, if this were a test, the area in which I think that we perform the strongest in is our incredible resilience, to be able to continue to succeed in spite of rather than because of. Very often we are, swimming upstream, whether it's personally or professionally, and we're figuring out ways to do that. And quite frankly, to do it looking beautifully on top of that, truly embracing what it means to live inside of this brown skin in an America that did not always love it so much. I am grateful for the fact that America is really beginning to embrace the beauty of diversity. And we're seeing that reflected in our media in different kinds of ways and our marketing. So I'm grateful for that. We appreciate progress. We look forward to more of that. Mm-hmm. Where I would say we are lacking, or we got a C on our test, so to speak, is what we allow to happen inside of our personal relationships. I think that part of the problem that we are having is that we've so defined ourselves by having a man that we are settling for less than the men we deserve. And in so doing, there are multiple ripple effects that happen because of that. The impacts on us both personally and emotionally, the impacts on, the quality of our relationships, the impacts on, the families that we may build with these individuals. And this is not to put men down. It's to say that men have a tendency to rise to the standard of the women they are with. And if we keep lowering the standard, our men will never reach their greatness. So that is where I would say that we need to tighten it up a little bit
there. And you know what? We're going to come back and talk more in detail about relationships as we go through this conversation. But Carol, what would your rating be for the overall state of Black women in America today?
Ooh, this is difficult for me. And because I think I'm not a psychologist, but emotionally and psychologically, I would give us an A- because we're very resilient, we're very determined, we're very committed. But on the other hand, we have to deal with a society that we have, through years and generations, had to convince that we were up to the task and that we were more than qualified. And the failure to convince them has less to do with us and more to do with society itself. And so this is a balancing act for me, but I give our resilience, determination, commitment an A-.
Okay.
And society has to get up to us, but frankly, it's an exhausting task to constantly fight the same battles over and over again.
So you are determined to put that minus or plus in there. You ladies, I tell you, I said A, B, C, D, or F.
I know. I'm sorry. Okay, A then.
Daun, what's your perspective? How are we doing in overall state of Black women in America?
The questions, as they are presented, are challenging because we come from different perspectives in overall, in our overall responses. And so in that challenge, if you say overall state, then I would give us a C because I have to factor in all of the people who disrespect us, deny us, talk about us, and don't want to give us an opportunity. And that's mainly the other half of some people in the world. So I would give us a C. But as far as the resilience piece in Black women, I'm going to give us an A because we fight as best we know how to maintain and to do our families, to work, to manage all the things that happen to us. And we excel as best we can with what we know. Mm-hmm. We're educated. Some of us are, some of us aren't. But with what we know, we have carried America. And for that, I give us an A. Okay. And I hope that we will continue to carry America because we're going to need it in the months and years to come.
Well, let's break it down into some sectors, if you will. So, for example, let's talk about politics. because in this 117th Congress, which goes now through 2023, and we know the election's coming, right now there are 25 Black women in Congress. There are none in the Senate with the election of Kamala Harris to vice president. Okay. Black women were elected to Congress for the first time from two states, and one of three freshman Black congresswomen was elected in a majority white district. Now, although Republican women make up the majority of women newcomers to Congress, there are no Black Republican women. So how have Black women pushed open these doors? And Daun, I'm coming to you first on this in terms of political representation.
I would say.
Go ahead, Carol.
I would say is Carol going first?
No. Go ahead, Daun. I'm sorry.
No,
That's why I wasn't sure whose voice that was. Go ahead, Daun.
Okay. And I'm working this phone. I would say that we have, as Black women, we've opened doors, even though it's taken us a long time. Mm-hmm.
because of how we have had to learn to manage people, relationships, work environment, community activism, we've learned how to manage that, I think, in a way that does not create fear for some. And so the sister that was elected in a predominantly white district is because she's worked for it and she's built those relationships and partnerships. And in most cases, when an elected official wins, it's because they have earned some type of trust with their constituent base and they communicate with their constituent base. It has taken us a very long time. I do think we're going to take over. I don't know about the Republican Party and its embrace of diverse ideas as to whether or not we'll have a Republican female, even though we know they exist. But I just don't think that they're running for office. But in the Democratic Party, we just want to try to make a difference wherever we are elected to serve or appointed to serve. And so building those relationships and building trust with the constituents is how we're going to be able to get even more people in office.
So, Carol, the Black women have always been involved in the political process. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. And ironically, we have been the ones that are on the grassroots level, organizing, directing, educating, and inspiring people to get involved. But yet, when it comes to us being elected and fulfilling the very offices that we train people to do, we're shoved to the back of the list. And it's frustrating for me to look at that happen. Now, I will admit there has been some progressive changes, but I guess my frustration comes from, why do we always have to wait when we're the ones that have trained the people who are already there? They should recognize our expertise and our talents and say, well, let's be more proactive in terms of Black women being elected and being at the forefront of decision making.
Well, Alvean, we knew that Black women was the reason, or a major reason, why the Biden-Harris administration is in office today. And you look at people like Stacey Abrams and others who are on the grassroots level, but really pushing for change in terms of representation. What is it going to take to continue that momentum?
I mean, you're asking the, multi-billion-dollar question, inside of that, because it is, we don't exist on an island as women of color, and one of the challenging things that we run into is the relationships that exist between our identities and our personal experiences and that of our respective counterparts, right? And so we've spent so many years trying to convince, America as, a more global concept, that we are human and that we matter and that we have feelings. But the reality is that we experience that on very micro levels, as well. And so when we are seeing women of color elected, there is a lot of applause that goes with that, because for those of us who are women of color, who have been in positions of power or authority, we recognize the otherism that is often, attributed to us, that somehow we don't belong, somehow we don't fit, somehow we are too intimidating, too aggressive, that our intelligence is a weapon rather than an asset, that somehow when we are working to be equal to be a contributing factor, that's weaponized against us as women of color inside of, the workplace and inside of the public sphere as well sometimes. So when we see the elevation of women of color, when we see that they're able to do that even in spaces that don't necessarily that they are represented in that demographic, that there is a reason why there's such celebration around that, because many of us know quite intimately and personally what it's like to have to tread that water on a daily basis. So how do we fix it for, the broader America? It's in small individual ways. It's not going to be some single wave. It's one relationship at a time, one company at a time that takes things seriously, one community at a time. It is going to be an incremental move forward.
Dawn, I know that there are a lot of groups that come together, coalitions of women's groups that come together in order to make sure that things happen. For example, the Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Jackson, Brown Jackson, there's a coalition of Black female political groups who are working to, social media and who are working through other media sources and putting the word out and providing as much support as they can. I know you're the group that you work with in Washington, and I apologize, I can't think of the name of it right now. The Black women's group that you all...
Black Women for Positive Change.
Yes, Black Women for Positive Change. You guys were very instrumental in terms of getting the Biden and Kamala Harris ticket elected and on the ballot and then elected as president and vice president. How important is it that these groups continue the work that they're doing in order to make sure that we not only get in office but stay in office?
It's very important. We have to do that. And just today, many of those same groups, National Council of Negro Women, Delta, and all the Divine Nine female organizations, there are so many organizations out there are meeting at the Supreme Court, marching today, just to make that statement that we support her and we want her in office. But in that, we're also emailing and calling the senators who are going to make the final decision, because many of us are represented by senators who don't have the same beliefs and values that we do, and who, are raising, questions that are unnecessary for a woman who has proven that she can do whatever is put before her. So that's going on today. So we are continuing to organize. We are selecting races to fund and watch, individually fund, because we're nonprofits. But as women coming together, we are making sure that people have what they need in order to run. Because, it's money is the main thing. Others have millions more, and we work with hundred thousands. And, you aren't able to get your message out, or you have to figure out another way, or you definitely have to have more boots on the ground. So we're doing a better job, I think, now and going forward, especially since so many people see how critical it is to have people in office where you're in the majority. And all you have to do is look at Virginia and see how much we just lost in this 1 year. And the session isn't even over yet, with things that many of us felt were positive for all Virginians. But because perspectives are different, we've lost some of those things that we thought would help us in continuing to move forward. So it's a long fight, it's a long journey. The messaging that's out there that is discouraging people from voting and from being engaged and involved, it's really being heightened in the Black and brown communities. And so, we have to counter those messages. There's a lot going on that we have to do. But yes, we are staying involved, still involved, and will be involved till we're gone.
And Carol, I'm coming to you in just a second. But Alvean, let me circle back to you for a moment from the relationship and psychological perspective of when people say these Black female groups, for example, are only supporting this candidate because she's Black. I mean, when do we get past the because she's Black or to the because she's qualified? Right. Because she can do the job.
And what's interesting about that is that, nobody, ascribes to them that you voted for who you voted for because they are white. It is that you are supporting their politics, that your values match their values, that, what you want for your family matches what it is that they are purporting to bring to the table politically. So it's very interesting that when it comes to us, it's always narrowed down to the most basic, identifiable traits or assets. And what's also interesting is the realization that you're not really doing the math on that, because, the Republican Party years in the past ran Alan Keyes. That didn't make a difference for us. Like you can pull out, and I believe it was, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of her name because I so dislike her as a human. I think I've dismissed it. But there's a very, very conservative female pundit who used to always talk about the fact that from a Republican Democratic standpoint, that we'll just put our best Black up against yours, that it was just an issue of, let's see if we can split the vote by just bringing another Black person, a Black face, as if that's how we make our decisions. And the reality is that, there's so many of us that are not fans of Candace Owens, who, while she's not in politics, constantly comments about it. She's young, she's attractive, she's bright, but her politics don't match the realities of our lived experiences. And so just because you have a package that looks like ours does not guarantee some, immediate affiliation. We don't vote for women just because they're women. You know how many people in America didn't vote for Hillary Clinton? Clearly. And there are women all over America, and we often represent the largest voting bloc. She still didn't get it. And, there are lots of things we can talk about where that's concerned, but most of us know that part of the reason that we got Trump was because white women voted for Trump, right? So we don't make our decisions on these superficial things as gender only, color only, those kinds of things. It's a little bit insulting. So when you have women of color who are supporting a candidate, they're supporting a candidate because they believe her to be qualified. She just happens to also be a woman of color. And the goal is to just make sure it's not harder for her to be able to get in that position. Mm-hmm. It's not that we're supporting her just because she's Black, because that is the most asinine orientation to anything. So we should just be careful about how we ascribe support by virtue of such a superficial package.
Carol, are your students, your female students, are they still interested in becoming politically active?
Oh, my gosh. Yes, they are. And right now we're in the process of looking at how we here at Norfolk State specifically as student activists and potential political leaders get involved in the upcoming off-year elections. And a lot of the students are beginning to organize right now. We're talking about it, engaged in classes about it, and our free time working on it.
Okay. All right. So this question I know is going to set some people off. So let me get the phone numbers right now. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What do you think is the state of Black women in America today? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So ladies, is there a socioeconomic gap? In other words, are there issues that Black middle class and upper middle class women deal with versus lower income Black women? And is that separation something that keeps us from being united as a whole? Mm-hmm. Daun, let me start with you. Daun said, please don't start with me. Start with Alvean. Okay, Alvean, your turn.
So are there things that keep us separate as women? I would say yes. But I think that they're magnified because of the nature of what it is that we have to navigate as women of color in America. But it's not to say that those aren't things that just exist between women and connection, period. And what I mean by that is that connection is often developed by virtue of shared experiences, right? And so if I have a lot of privilege, access, and opportunity, because let's be clear, privilege exists in an economic fashion also, right? Privilege is not just about your skin. There are lots of forms of privilege. We've talked about it on other shows before. We can talk about it again sometime in the future. But for those of us who experience economic privilege as a woman of color, because that does happen, our experiences, our lived experiences as people who can afford a nanny or a babysitter or a housekeeper or, you know, a 5-bedroom house, and all of those lived experiences are not the same lived experiences as one of our fellow sisters who is trying to figure out how to put food on the table, navigate social services, figure out how to make sure that the father of her children are actively involved in their children's lives, navigating potentially multiple, you know, fathers inside of her world. We have different lived experiences. So sometimes for those sisters, we are just as close to white women as white women are white women. So understanding that the divisions in those realities can often be just as extreme as the divisions in culture or color, because your reality is often defined by what your exposures and your opportunities and your access is. And that's why it's important that no matter how high we get, that you're actively inside of various communities so that you don't get so far away from those experiences that the issues and the needs of those individuals no longer matter to you, because that's not your problem. You know, and the gas prices jumping, no big deal because you don't even look at the gas prices, and, you know, all of those kinds of things. It's different. So yes, there are things that separate us, and those things can determine whether we're really passionate about something or not based on how it affects us personally. It's important that we stay connected.
So, Daun, you've been in public service for a very, very long time. And so there are people who may say to you, well, but you don't understand, Daun, because you know, as Alvean just said, you probably don't have to look at the gas prices, but you can't relate to who I am. Does that socioeconomic issue separate us as Black women?
Only if we allow it to, because I don't think that there's anyone that knows me, especially in the city of Norfolk, that would say that, because it has been my lived experience. I haven't always been receiving the income that I have received. So I had to work my butt off just like everybody else is to get up here. You know, I had to work myself out of debt, too, because I didn't know what to do with a credit card when I had a credit card. So, you know, I truly understand the lived experience of a person, a woman of color, Black, who's trying to figure out how to make it. And so that wouldn't come my way, but yes, it would come to others. Because we do, as Alvean said, some people have a tendency to forget. But then I think in today's time, because as parents, we are able to provide, those of us who have means, who have wealth, are able to provide for our children, and our children aren't exposed to those struggles. And as parents, I think it behooves us that even though our children are able to get all the things that they want, learn that they only get the things that they need. And we have to do a better job helping them to learn, or at least helping them to be in communities that have challenges so that they can see the experiences of individuals who don't have means, so that they can build that empathy to be able to know that they have to go back and help others. Because we can't go up and not help others to come up as well, because we don't have, everybody doesn't have boots, as it's been said, to pull themselves up. So we have to help.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the state of Black women in America with the Another View Roundtable pundits, Alvean Lyons, Carol Pretlow, and Daun Hester. Carol, your response: is there a socioeconomic gap that keeps us from being united as Black women?
I would like to say no, but there is. And I think it is our job, those of us who are educators, to help people in our community, and specifically when you're looking at the academic community, to help students to understand, yes, you might be more blessed or have more access to opportunities than some of your colleagues might, but it is your job to help all of us be on an equal playing field. It is very difficult if you are a student. For example, I have several students in this category who are battling with homelessness and who have resource access problems, and then they're competing with students who are like, well, my dad and mom are paying for everything. Well, if your dad and mom are paying for everything, then you have to help your brothers and sisters in the classroom who don't have that to come up to be equal. And we do that by not just giving a grade and saying, okay, you got an A, you got a B, bye. It's, okay, you have an A. Let's help somebody who has a C. Let's help us all get together and make progress and develop. And so it's a learning process, I think.
Okay, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Mark joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon to you and your group.
Thank you.
Good. I have a question for Ms. Alvean Lyons, specifically given her background. Ms. Lyons, I want to ask you, is it me or within my cohort of Black males, we're seeing that there seems to be a very strong and clear push in the marketing and advertising that is showing white males with Black females. And I'd just like to see if you're seeing the same thing. And if so, why do you think this is so?
Thanks for the call, Mark. We appreciate that. And that'll take us into our relationships conversation. Go ahead, Alvean.
Well, it's an awesome question, and it's a very accurate observation. And so there are a couple of, thoughts around this. And I am not pointing to any particular scientific research. I can just tell you some of the conversations that are had around individuals such as myself and sort of evaluating what this means socially and psychologically. So
before that, hold on, Alvean. Let me just say, according to Pew Research, 7% of intermarried couples include a Black man and a white woman. 3% include a Black woman and a white man. That's according to Pew Research, anyway.
According to, right. Yes. So I would say that even though that the science, what you're seeing in the marketing looks a little different than the numbers themselves, there's nothing happens in marketing by accident. Marketing is very intentional. And so there are a couple of things that sort of maybe underpinning what it is that we're seeing. One, women of color have often been the more palatable entity inside of communities of color. That's to say that as women, we're considered feminine, and when I say feminine, I'm not talking about what has been ascribed to us typically as Black women, but I'm saying that as a gender, we are considered less threatening than our Black male counterparts. And the fact that we are women, there is still that natural connection between a man and a woman, no matter what color you make them, right? So there is an element of that is present that society is more willing to embrace than to see Black men with white women in all of these commercials, all right? So that's item number one. Item number two is that women of color, particularly educated women of color, have the hardest time finding an equal partner. And as a result, many women of color who are committed to having families and having a lifelong partner are choosing to marry and date outside of their culture. And in so doing, expanding that dating pool, that often means that it now includes white men. And many, many women of color are finding that they're having healthy, happy relationships cross-culturally because the lack of available Black men means that the average Black man who has a credit score above 500, has an education, has a car, both of his legs and both eyes, he has about 19 women to choose from, just based on the ratio, right? So if I'm just a woman trying to find a good man and it's like a 1-to-19 ratio, and if I try to fish inside of that bucket, I'm going to have a very hard time finding a partner. And as a result, the dating pool is expanding, and that is actively embracing individuals from other cultures. So you're absolutely right. You are seeing it. But there are multiple reasons that are underpinning why you're seeing it.
So how are we doing in our relationships? Daun, let me ask you this question. Are Black women still, so that the societal stereotype is that either you're a single Black woman carrying everything, or you're the major breadwinner in the family and your Black man sitting home with his feet up not doing anything. I take issue with both of those stereotypes, but I wonder what your perspective is in terms of the relationship between Black women and their Black men in society.
I think that is the stereotype that is being perpetuated so that we continue to think less than of Black women and Black men. And so I think that it is a targeted effort, because even when individuals, a Black man, Black woman, are together, they may be struggling together, but they're struggling together to try to do something better based on their lived experience. Mm-hmm. So they still might be making mistakes, but they're still struggling to be together. They're trying together to do better with what they know. And if they had a mentor or somebody to help them, they could get to another level one step at a time. So I think it is intentional. Yes, it happens. We picked the wrong man, and, it takes us sometimes too long to say you got to go. But I think overall, I think it's one of those continuing stereotypes that's being perpetuated, just like it is on social media with Black women and, the dancing and, all the clothes hanging off and all those things. I just think that is the stereotype to present of us, to continue to have people across, what was your statement overall?
Yes.
Of Black women? It gives us in the CD range, because it depends on who you're talking to. But we know that it's not true. And that's why I give Black women an A, because no matter where we are in the struggle of life, we still in the struggle, and we don't give up on it.
Carol, are we supporting our Black men?
Ooh, that's a difficult question for me to answer. I think we are, but it depends. How you interpret our support depends on a range of things. It might depend on your personal experience. It might depend on who you know in which communities, and I'm not talking about the communities being divided racially as much as I am the gap between maybe working class professional and other occupational positions. And so that's a difficult question to answer. I think we are supportive, but as always, I think we're going to get criticized no matter what we do. There's some who are going to say we're not doing enough. There's some who are saying we're doing too much. And so there you go.
Alvean, I'm coming to you with that same question. And I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about financially either. I'm talking about emotionally, spiritually. I mean, the whole idea of Black women being supportive, particularly knowing how difficult it is in this society for Black men.
Yeah, I think that we are profoundly supportive, sometimes too supportive, because there are definitely times in which, we're raising our partners, rather than being able to just be a partner to our partners, right? And there's some grace given. So just from a personal note, my husband's dad died very young, right? So he did not ever see really what it meant to be a husband, right? Because his dad was already gone by the time he was 15 years old. So it's not to say that, yes, in those 15 years, he saw his mom and dad, but his dad worked a lot. He didn't really know the intricacies associated with what partnership would include, right? So we had to figure a lot of those things out together. I was fortunate to have, parents who are still married to this day. They've celebrated more than 50 years of marriage together.
That's
and,
fantastic.
went from poverty to doing extraordinarily well into early retirement, and were immigrants to this country. So they did the uphill battle and still managed to do, as Daun was referencing, managed to struggle and build together, something really important and impressive. And so, but my husband didn't know those things, and he wasn't familiar with those things. So part of our relationship required that I gave him a lot of grace around figuring out some of these spaces, right? And that's my responsibility to him as a partner who loves him and believes in him. Now, to the contrary, there are other, of us that are with men, and my husband's a wonderful man, a really good character. So, but we also have the extremes where you have women who are so dedicated and so loyal and so committed that you're staying with somebody who is not bringing anything to the table, who comes to the table with only a fork and nothing else. And in situations like that, they're not just about money. I'm saying there are people who just eat from you emotionally, just eat from you psychologically, just eat from you spiritually, and you've got to bring more to the table. It is not, the identity of a man is not just how does he provide financially. Sometimes we don't even need that. But have you learned to be able to provide for your partner emotionally? Have you learned to be able to provide for her psychologically? Have you learned to be able to provide for her spiritually? Is she safe with you? And so those kinds of things, we have to expand the definition of what manhood is, particularly in communities of color, so that we can together, collectively, rise. And that's not to exclude anyone else or multicultural relationships or marriage. I'm just simply saying for those of us who choose to marry inside of the culture, there are things that we are going to have to do and be one to another in order to. And love is also holding people to the fire too. Because love is not just I stay with you no matter what you do. Sometimes loving you means that I hold you accountable, and that means we cannot be in this relationship until you're ready to be an equal contributing entity to this partnership. So sometimes we have to step away from relationships as well, and that is an act of love. So let's not create this thing that only, good women stay no matter what. That's nonsense, okay? Good women are good women, okay? And sometimes being good is setting your butt free so that you can go be a better version of yourself.
Daun, I see you shaking your head. You want to add to that?
I'm just agreeing with everything she has said. But it takes, as women, it takes us a while to get to that point. And, I just pray and hope that women learn, and men too, that you don't have to hurt each other or emotionally bring people down in order to get ahead. And that's just harmful to both of you. And so the more we can do to continue to support each other and let women and men know that, yeah, it's okay to work on yourself and fix yourself. We don't get to be who we are, I am certainly not, thank the Lord, my 30-year-old self, my 66-year-old self right now don't take no stuff off nobody. So, but I had to learn that. And so those lessons learned, we want people to learn, we want everyone to learn those earlier in their life, so that they can more structure their lives to be what they dream for it to be.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Casey joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Casey. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Wonderful. Great conversation today. I just wanted to share a instance that I had at the park with a little girl. I was there with my two young sons. I'm a white woman. I'm from South Carolina, and I came from a background where people really, I was told very simply, if you date somebody who's a man who's black, you'll be disowned. And it was very traumatizing and not at all fun. But we were at the park the other day, and there was a little girl there. We were all connecting over, she was probably 9 years old, a black girl, and she was saying her favorite movie right now was Encanto, and we were bonding over the music and singing You Don't Know About Bruno. And she also said, I said, what's your other favorite movie? And she said, I love Family Reunion. She was like, but there's one line there that's so funny. When Medea says, do you have are you dating anybody? And the mother says, is he black? And she said, and I couldn't figure out what was the problem with white boys? Are they radioactive or something? And we sort of laughed because it was just such a sweet, innocent sort of way to process it. But it stuck with me because I know how much that, made me nervous as a child, that sort of conditional love. And I just said to her, and I'm wondering if I said the right thing, that I would just be really proud, because if she came home, if my sons brought her home, she seems really funny and really nice and really, great. And that I'd be really proud if she was their girlfriend. So did I do the right thing? I don't know, It's so hard. Children are so innocent and so sweet, and I don't want to undermine anything her mother is saying to her, but I just wanted her to know that I thought she was awesome and that I was totally cool with it.
Oh, Casey, well, thank you for sharing that story. I'm going to let our relationship expert respond as to whether or not you said the right thing.
Well, first of all, I think it was beautiful what her response was. I think part of the problem in America is we're so busy trying to be politically correct that we have lost the art of sincerity, right? And I don't mean that we can be sincerely brutal or cruel to one another. That's not what I mean. But I mean that when you're trying so hard to tap dance on a needle point, people make a lot of mistakes on that, right? We've just got to give each other a little more room to just be sincere. And when you have slightly different values than the household that whomever it is having a conversation with you about, the trick is not to tell them what they should be doing in their household. The trick is to just simply say, well, if you were in mine, I would love to have you here. Because there's nothing wrong with that. You're not stepping on any other parent's toes about what should or shouldn't happen in their household. But instead, you're merely speaking to the fact that in my household, you would be welcome because I think you're awesome, and that's more than enough, and sometimes, as the Bible tells us, sometimes one plants, the other one waters, but the increase, really comes from the divine, right? So we're not always responsible for getting it all right. Sometimes it's just planting a good seed and letting, that thing grow and germinate inside of that individual's life.
Thank you so much for that call, Casey. That was a wonderful story. We appreciate that. But let me ask you guys a question. What is the relationship between Black and white women in particular? Because, some people say we all get along and some people say maybe not so much. What do you think, Daun? Let's start with you. And then I'll come to you, Carol.
I just think it's whether or not you're building relationships. Mm-hmm. And for me, relationships means I go to your house, you come to my house, my kids, your kids play together, and we go out to lunch or we go shopping. And, in my circle of 4, because it is a small circle, there is a white woman in that circle. And so if anything, when I got my breast cancer diagnosis, she was there in the room praying with and her family and everything. Mm-hmm. I just met her daughter's, we're going to call him fiancé-to-be, and I grilled him this past Saturday and let him know if he messed up, then Aunt Dawn would jack him up. He's a white guy. So, but yes. So it depends on if you build a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I do have relationships with other white women, but relationships are only formed when you work at it. We all have the surface relationships where we have to work with people because of who they are. But to me, when you say relationship, that's somebody who's in your circle, somebody you can call on, somebody who has given you guidance or advice as to how to do something that you're trying to learn how to do or want to do better, even how to navigate political waters, business waters, or whatever it might be. And so I just think all of those are important. Do I think it's getting better? I do think it's getting better. Yes, of course, we still have a long way to go.
Carol, what do you think?
Oh, wow, I'm the wrong person to ask because basically I'm a me person, and while I'm pleasant, I hope, to just about everybody, my friendships are usually very independent, whether they are Black, white, Latino, or who. I enjoy them one-on-one in work and related things, but in terms of my free time, I'm a solo actor. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. I get that. I get that. Alvean?
you would ask me this, not too long after having a very, very painful cross-cultural experience. Yeah. What I would say is this, that as Daun was referencing about the fact that relationships take work, inside of that work is extraordinary vulnerability, right? Because you're stepping out of the space of the homogenous, as in we all look the same, we all came from the same place, we all think the same kind of thing, right? And it is very human for people to drift to crowds that look like them, think like them, act like them. What takes work is stepping beyond that to do love and connection outside of those spaces. And when we get hurt, it is very easy and instinctive to want to run back to your corner. And I'm going to go back to the people who know me, understand me, and think like me, right? But we have to, despite the pain, choose to step beyond it. Because if we don't, we will only be left with pain. We will only be left with division. We will only be left with distrust. And the distrust that often underpins the separation that exists is only possible because it is very easy to hate from afar. It is very hard to hate up close. So it is important for us to intentionally close that gap. Even if it means we get stung sometimes, even if it means that it's painful sometimes, we have to be fully intentional about closing that gap.
Now, I'm going to ask the same question about us. Are we taking care of each other? Meaning sisters taking care of sisters. Daun.
I think we're
and we
trying
got
to.
We got about 3 minutes, so keep that in mind.
I'll talk real fast. I do think that I think we're trying to, for those who are close to us, and then those that we see every once in a while. I will say that in this time, coming out of COVID and going into a war, conflict, invasion, where, most of us were thinking, okay, we're coming out of COVID, we can breathe. There are more of us who need more support and need listening ears. And our children need more listening ears as well. And so that's another conversation that we need to have, because I think we do need people to talk to. So we need to pay attention to how our friends look and whatever we see that's different, and try to help bring them to a point where they get to a better space or place.
Okay. Carol, are we taking care of each other?
I think we do. And again, I think from a personal example, I don't think there are days when I'm having a rough day, and from students to faculty to just casual observers on the street, people will say, oh, can I help you? Or you need a lift? Or do you need this or do you need that? So I think we are.
Okay. Alvean, you get the last minute.
I would say that I think that we try very hard, but I think that we sometimes fail our strong sisters. And what I mean by that is very often when we believe somebody to be strong, we assume that they don't need to be checked on. They don't need to be called. They don't need that extra hug or love. I think that we're very good at taking care of what is overtly broken. But one of the responsibilities that we have is that we have to see past the facade and to move into the fact that even the strong among us still need to feel connected and seen and know that it is okay for them to lean on someone else, because we all need a somebody.
Absolutely. And that is a really, really good point, because and it's been coming out more and more, especially with the athletes who have been saying, my mental health, the young lady, I'm sorry, her name escapes me right this
Naomi.
Second. Yes. Who committed but the young lady who committed suicide recently because everyone thought that she was so strong, and we don't check in on our sisters that we say, they're doing fine. We don't need to be bothered with them.
Absolutely.
Roundtable, as always, thank you so very, very much. I love you, ladies, and I want you all to take care of yourselves. That's Alvean Lyons, Daun, Hester, and Carol Pretlow. And we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Another View, the Another View Roundtable, and that we've given you some food for thought. You can listen to this show again or any of our Another View programs by going to our website, anotherviewradio.org, and downloading the podcast of your choosing. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week on Another View, producer Lisa Godley will be in the host chair, exploring programs and efforts to give Black men a leg up during these challenging times. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a bachelor's degree since tuition is 1/3 the cost of four-year schools. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.